Hello, I'm Salim Khan and I'm going to do my recorded presentation for Project Program and Portfolio Management. So firstly, I'd like to show you our project brief, um, which is what we developed before we started the project. So as you can see here, we started off with breaking down the project into group tasks and individual tasks. So one of the group tasks was to do an introductory report, which we got 60% on. Secondly was to develop the project, which is basically we decided on making a fully functional blog where students could go online and look at the blog, look at the articles and learn things about the Newcastle area and Northumbria University, as well as any other social interests they might have. The third task was a group presentation, which we did to each other. So I've got that to show you later on. That was basically 50% of the marks were group based, and the two tasks left, individual tasks, were a reflective report, which I've written earlier today, and also this recorded presentation. So basically, within our brief, we've got further description of what we had to do for each task. So basically, we created a syllabus or mark scheme for the individual tasks that we were going to do. And so we've completed all of them now. It's just the recorded presentation, which I'm doing now, and the reflective report, which I haven't submitted yet. So yeah, as you can see, as I said before, it was group 50%, individual tasks were 50% of the mark for the module. And then we've got the individual weightings of each task lower down. So we've got 20, 15, and 15. So the report makes up 20% of the mark. The blog itself is 15. Our group presentation is 15. And then 50% for the individual tasks, which is the individual report and this recorded presentation. So yeah, you can see some of the information there, which is our submission deadlines and such earlier. Our submissions that we submitted earlier. So yeah, that's the first thing I wanted to show you. The second thing I want to show you is the actual blog itself. So here it is in all its glory. As you can see here, we've got some featured articles across the top, which will always stay there. This is the logo that I think Stephen came up with. So we've got some subheadings for the articles submitted here. And this is basically like a news feed of where the latest submissions are at the top and the earlier submissions are at the bottom. So I'd just firstly like to take you to some of the articles I made, which are in the entertainment section. So I decided to stay away from Newcastle itself because I don't live in the area and I commute there. I also haven't lived in Newcastle before and don't know much about the university, so I decided to make it on my interests because I think if you're going to read a blog, you're more likely to read a blog because it's information that you want to see or an interest that you have rather than if you're looking around for information. So one of my articles was my favourite video games. So basically, I went through some of the video games that I like playing, explained a little bit about them and why I like them. So yeah, it's just it's nothing too heavy. I also did a more in-depth review of a game that just came out last month called Civilization 6, and it's basically a turn-based strategy game where you start as a civilization, such as Russia or Japan, and you basically evolve through the ages and try and win through a series of victory conditions. It's quite a nerdy game, but I quite like it. And I also went for an article on Netflix where I basically discussed the series that I've watched recently, and the series is on there that I like the most. So I went for Scorpion, which, if you don't know, it's like a TV series, but all the cast in it, they're all geniuses, so it's quite interesting. Rick and Morty, which is a sci-fi cartoon. Hannibal, it's just like a thriller, psychological thriller. Stranger Things, which if anyone hasn't watched this year, they probably should because it's really, really, really good. Death Note is an anime I've watched. Yeah, anime is not really everyone's cup of tea, but I think if you're going to try one, you should definitely try this one. So yeah, that's the blog. As you can see, we've got lots of different articles, some relative to Northumbria University, some of the things that are in Newcastle that you can do, um, also some transportation around Newcastle, and this is probably the one that's most unique, more sorted for students, which is like tips around Newcastle and such. So yeah, that's the blog, and as you can see, it looks really good. It's quite nice. It's quite clean, and yeah, plenty of articles there to read. So that's the blog. Now I'd just like to quickly show you a presentation that we did together, which was basically the. If you just bear with me 1 second. Yeah, it's basically a blog that presentation that we did together, just to reflect on the blog as a whole. So I've got the website there. We basically decided what we wanted to talk about in the presentation, and we and people sort of were designated which bits of the project they want to talk about. So we summarised what the project was about, which of course it was about a blog, the steps, which was fairly simple. It's implementation, content creation, user feedback. Luke had some ideas that of the considerations that we made when making the blog, um, some of the decision making on the topics, customization of the blog, what we achieved, what things were most difficult, what problems we encountered, a section on the feedback which we got from Monkey Survey, and some things that we do differently in the future. So yeah, that was pretty much the presentation that we did together, and it went really well. We actually we made the presentation together and we presented it to each other there and then, so it was really good. So the final thing I want to show you is my reflective report which I've written. So basically, I'm going to do a reflective report, I like to use the Gibbs reflective cycle, which is something I came across in my undergraduate degree. It's basically it's a good way of um, getting the structure that you need to write a reflective cycle. So there's a picture of it here, and it's got 6 stages. Um, There's description, feelings, evaluation, analysis, conclusion, and action plan. So basically, what happened, what were you thinking and feeling, or was it good and bad? What was good about the experience? What was bad about it? What else could you make about the situation? What else could you have done? And if it rose again, what would you do? So it comes hand in hand with the PowerPoint we did because it was a reflective PowerPoint, but more from an individual standpoint. So in my report here, I've gone through a description of what we did, which was basically the 5 tasks and submitting the blog. And then I've talked about my feelings throughout the whole process. So I've obviously said that I was quite supportive of the idea because it just sort of came out of nowhere and it was quite unique in the fact that I don't think anyone else would be doing a blog. And what's quite nice about it is you have something finished at the end that is actually working, and you have like some substance to a project rather than if you just said, oh, I'm going to write an essay about such and such, where you don't have anything, not to say tangible at the end, but something where there's some substance to it. Yeah, so in the evaluation, I've just talked about that I think we completed the tasks because, as you've seen earlier, we've got a fully functional blog with, plenty of articles in there. And the analysis have talked about sort of what problems we had as well. One of the key things was that, as well as the evaluation, I've talked about that we successfully completed the task, and I've also talked about some of the problems that we had. So one of them was that even though we did communicate over Facebook quite regularly, we didn't have as many meetings as we would have liked in person. This was probably due to the fact that people were busy or people had other deadlines to do. A big problem we came up with was submitting the blog, because it's obviously a website. You can't just submit one document for it, but there was a way of PDFing the blog and submitting that, so that was acceptable. And also, I think one of the problems we had as a whole was that when we decided to make a blog as the project, everyone visioned a different thing at the end goal. Like I maybe thought it would be a place where students can talk to each other, you can write articles and have some feedback, and then go from there. Then some other people thought, oh, maybe it should be more of a sort of what's the word? Sorry, like a blog which would be more just academic, sorry. So just academic things on there, like how to reference, things to do at uni, things to do as a student. So very specific to Northumbrian students, whereas I maybe thought that there could be more room for content on the blog. So in the analysis section, I maybe talk about why we did encounter them problems. So possibly we had some problems just because of availability and other deadlines at the time. And I think I would identify the project brief as probably the main cause for problems, because it was fairly vague. I mean, at the start of the project, we didn't have 100% ideas of where we were going with the project, so that led to a vague project brief. Where if maybe someone had some similar experience in doing that, we could write a more concise project brief, and this would mean that the group members could have more could have more guidance to work with when they complete the tasks. So I went through the conclusion there, and I've just re-summarised there that I think the project was a success. I've said that I probably could have submitted some more articles to the blog, but I just didn't, just due to the time scale of the situation. But the fundamentals of the blog are there. Like if you want to write something, you can post it, and it works. And there's featured pictures and featured articles on there, so it's something that's really good. And I'd like to just say that I actually really enjoyed writing my articles, and it was something I'd like to do in the future. I've toyed with the idea of maybe streaming a lot more, or making podcasts on my interests, but this maybe would help me just take the plunge and go for it. So, in an action plan, the final stage of the reflection, I've talked about that. Obviously, writing a more detailed project brief would be there'd be more guidance for members to complete the tasks at hand. And also, we might have, at the time, we might have flagged up the fact that it'd be difficult to submit the blog. I mean, we only knew it was going to be a problem when we tried to submit it, but in hindsight, we could have maybe thought about a possible solution for that. Also, because there was a breakdown in communications, it might have been really good to make a Gantt chart to assign dedicated time frames for each task to make sure we never fell behind. And then with that Gantt chart, we could say have weekly meetings that were set in stone, so students wouldn't. So students would have the best chance to attend the meetings, because sometimes we'd have a meeting with three or four rather than the whole lot. But it can't be helped at university. Everyone has different commitments, different deadlines that they've got to be getting on with. So for future works, if we were to do the project again, I'd like to introduce the idea of possibly merging the blog with a forum. In that way, you can have more users talking on the website, maybe open up threads of discussion, ask questions, help each other. Another thing would be having podcasts on the blog. So that'd be another media in which you can transfer information. So rather than writing an article, you could write a podcast. Maybe two of the people in the group could talk about something that they feel about, some of the problems they had at university and such. And it's just another way of sharing information. Another thing we could look at if we were to do it again is to maybe use a different website, and that would maybe open more avenues into having a more sophisticated blog. Then we could maybe incorporate a forum and incorporate some podcasts of sorts. So yeah, that's everything really. That's my blog. That's my reflective cycle of the blog, and I've showed you the project brief, which we did when we started. I showed you the blog itself and my reflective report. So hopefully that gives you an insight on how the bloggers have done their project. So thank you very much for listening, and I will see you when I see you.